Trigger warning. Suicide, eating disorders, and sexual abuse is discussed in this podcast episode 193. Some people may find this triggering. If this causes any distress, please seek support and contact Lifeline Australia on 13 11 14. If in a crisis, please contact your nearest emergency services, hospital, or a qualified medical doctor and professional. To talk to someone about eating disorders, you can contact Butterfly's National Helpline on 1-800 33 4673. They're open from 8 a.m. to midnight Australian Eastern Standard Time, 7 days a week. Please note, this is not a crisis line. In a crisis, please contact your nearest hospital or emergency services. Hi everyone, it's yvetteleblowitz from spiritgirl.com and welcome to Feel Good From Within. I'm super excited to be here with you today and with our very special guest, Chole Hayden, who is an award-winning actor, disability advocate, motivational speaker, and social media influencer, whose story of being different, not less, has attracted a worldwide following. She stars as Quinni in Heartbreak High, the Netflix remake of the iconic Australian series. We're here today to talk to Chole Hayden about her very first book, Different, Not Less, a neurodivergence guide to embracing your true self and finding your happily ever after. Chole, how are you today?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm good. How are you?
Really well, thank you. And I want to welcome our global audience. We're super excited you're here with us today, and you're going to be finding out more about Chole and her brand new book. So Chole, before we dive into your book, are you happy to tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
My name's Chole Hayden. I'm 25 years old. I live in country Victoria in Australia. I'm an actor. I'm an author, disability advocate. I'm an influencer, and I'm also autistic and have ADHD.
What inspired you to write your book?
Writing has always been an outlet for me. I've always loved writing. It's always been something that has kind of helped me to share my story through characters that aren't me. And then when I started my influencing and disability online advocacy, it started in the form of writing as well. I would write blog posts and stuff. So when I got approached by Murdoch about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, asking if I wanted to write a book with them, it was an immediate yes. It's always been where my heart is.
And what about when it comes to the title? Can you tell us why you chose Different, Not Less?
Since I started doing everything that I'm doing, Different, Not Less has kind of always been like my motto. It's always just been something that I've been very attached to, I suppose. And it just kind of becomes something that I think is attached to myself and attached to the community that I speak with. So there wasn't even really like a question about what the title of the book was going to be.
One of the things I found interesting was you included how to cope with sensory overload.
Small sensory overload is basically just a person living in a world, living in a society, living in a culture that is too much too often for them. This is very, very common in the autistic experience. And it basically just means that my body is shutting down. It said, I've had enough. This is too much. I'm out. And sensory overload for a lot of autistic people can look like having meltdowns. It can look like crying. It can look like physically shutting down, like being unable to talk, unable to communicate, being unable to use your senses correctly. For me, looking after myself when I know that I am in sensory overload, if I am out and about, it means bringing my noise-cancelling headphones with me so I'm able to use and experience what's easiest for me. It also means getting out of the situations it's possible for me to do. If I'm at home, it means turning the lights off, having my weighted blanket with me, having my animals with me, having things with me that reduce the sensory impact of the world around me and are going to be beneficial to me and my senses.
You grew up in an era where technology is the norm, social media is the norm, Snapchat is the norm. I grew up in an era where I didn't even have home telephone. And I had to ride my bike down to the local phone box to put 20-cent pieces in to even enter a competition. It's such a different world. Have you found that if you spend too much time on social media, it can make you feel more overloaded?
Yeah, 100%, definitely. I think it's a big thing for everyone, and I think especially young women and teenagers. When you're on social media so often, it almost changes what your idea of who you are and what society is supposed to look like. And I've been very cautious in making sure that the media that I do ingest and that I do create is real and it's honest, and that the influencers and the people that I follow aren't faking things. It's real life, it's honest, and it's the stuff that I want to see. It's the stuff that is positive, that makes me feel good about myself, that makes me feel good about the world. It can be quite dangerous. I find myself, especially with everything that's happening in my life at the moment, my book's just come out and Heartbreak High has just come out. It can be really easy for you to fall into this trap of, I'm only worthy if I get validation online. Oh, I'm not getting as many likes as I should, or I'm not getting as many likes as this person, or people aren't praising me enough, or someone criticized me for something. It can be really hard to fall into that trap of, I'm only valuable if the internet thinks I'm valuable, rather than looking at your personal life and your friends and your family and the worth that you have for simply existing. And that can be incredibly overwhelming, and I can only speak as an autistic person, but I'm sure that every human that is online, whether they have an online presence or whether they simply just use social media, I think it can be very overwhelming, and it can be quite dangerous to fall into that trap as well.
I totally agree with that. If I could have my way, when all of this was created, there would be no visualization of how many followers a person had, how many likes or views.
Mm-hmm.
Because I started out in blogosphere before Facebook was a thing. And back in those days, it was incredible. You just wrote something, put it out to the world. Only you personally could see who was reading it and how many. And then before blogging popped, what happened then was just the advertiser would ask, and it would be for them only. If I could change the world, that's what I would do for mental health. What do you think about that, Chloe?
I think that's a great idea.
We're changing the world one page at a time. You also talked about how to support yourself or someone else in shutdown. Can you share a little bit more about that with our listeners?
Shutdown is quite similar to sensory overload, but I guess it's more sensory overload over a long period of time, or sensory overload once it's kind of hit its peak. And it's similar to a meltdown, as it's an autistic person or a neurodivergent person that has experienced too much for too long. But while a meltdown is a little bit more outwards and maybe kind of more physical, a shutdown is just your body quite literally shutting down. And this is when people can become nonverbal. It's when people can stop communicating together. I find that I struggle to even hear when I'm in shutdown. It's almost like your body is running just on robot mode. It's using limited functions. It's using the bare minimum that it has to simply exist and survive. Looking after myself when I'm in shutdown means not having huge expectations on myself. When I'm in shutdown, it means that I'm going to lock myself in my bedroom and I'm going to rewatch my favorite comfort movies, and I'm going to use the resources around me and use my family to look after me and to protect me and to give me what I need, because at that point, I'm not able to give it to myself.
With you being an actor, what are some things you try to do to prevent burnout?
Burnout is being constantly exposed to too much, and that could be working too hard, giving too much of yourself. But burnout can also literally just be an autistic human trying to survive in a neurotypical pleasing society. That's hard to do. So burnout is very common. And while meltdown and shutdown are more temporary, short-term things, burnout can last weeks, months, even years. And for a lot of autistic people, and for me specifically, burnout looks like chronic fatigue. I get very, very tired very, very easily. It means that I may not be as eloquently spoken as I often am. I'm not able to do as much as I usually would be, or as a lot of other people can do in a day. And for me, it happens when I am working too hard. I don't have an off switch. I'm very bad at knowing when too much is too much until it's already happened. Looking after myself during burnout for me means not taking on more than I can handle and allowing myself to simply exist without feeling like I have to contribute to society and feel like I have to completely and always have my foot in the door, what our capitalist society tells us that we constantly have to be doing and achieving in order to have worth. I think a big thing is realizing that you have worth as a human being for simply existing. You don't have to be constantly chipping in and doing something in order to have that value.
I love that. And in your book, you opened up in one of your hardest chapters, which I thought took immense courage and vulnerability. People who are autistic are 9 times more likely to die from suicide.
Mm-hmm.
and autistic people on average may live 26 years shorter than non-autistic people.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, it's not out there. It's not spoken about. The word isn't out there. So it's just kind of this silent killer, this silent thing that is happening to all of us and is happening to so many of us, but isn't being spoken about and is so ready to be spoken about. People need to know this stuff. People need to know the statistics of suicide and the statistics of early death in autistic people and the statistics of poor mental health rates in autistic people, because it is at a skyrocketing high and there are reasons for that. And it was definitely extremely difficult to write about, but it was something that is also really important that people hear. And for me, that outweighs anything.
You opened up also about your eating disorders.
Get a therapist, seek out a psychologist, seek out a counselor, seek out a therapist, because this is not a journey that should be taken lightly. Eating disorders, particularly anorexia, has the highest mortality rate of any mental illness. Such a sad, life-taking illness. This isn't something that, first of all, you should be doing by yourself. And second of all, isn't something that you should be taking lightly in yourself. A lot of people feel like they're not sick enough. That's the biggest thing I hear all the time. I'm not sick enough to seek help. There's people worse than me. But getting that professional help was the biggest part of my recovery journey. Like I was saying before, I curated my Instagram feed, so I took out all of the people that I was looking at and going, oh, I wish I looked like them, and why am I not as skinny as her, and why am I not as pretty as her? And I took them off my feed because it wasn't healthy for me to see that, and changed my feed instead to beautiful people of diverse bodies and diverse types of human beings who I look at and go, you're beautiful, and you don't look like what our industry tells us that we have to look like. And the more that I fill my brain with that, the more I'm able to go, okay, well, maybe I'm okay too. And I've got affirmations all over my mirrors and my walls and everything that remind me daily that I'm saying your body is okay and who you are is okay and you are authentically you, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, you need to see a therapist. You need to see someone who is a professional at this, because this is not something that you should be going through by yourself.
I love those words of wisdom, Chloe. And for someone like myself also who struggled with body image and eating disorders and looking at myself in the mirror being a size 8, still thinking I'm fat, and being really restrictive of what I eat, over exercising to keep the weight off. So I too, with my Instagram feed, I mainly look at illustrations, cute little dogs.
Absolutely. Fill your feed with
like
cute dogs.
Little feel good things and positive affirmations. And basically, I really just created it non-body. And
Yes.
it's just been the best thing I've done for my mental health and well-being. One of the things I found really interesting in your book is you shared how to find your tribe.
Yes.
How important is that to you, your tribe? And what about if there was someone listening in now and goes, Chloe, I want to find my tribe. I feel all alone. No one gets them at school. And they just don't feel like they're fitting in. They feel like they're an outcast. Couple of tips to find their tribe.
Your people are out there. I promise you, you have got people out there. There are like 8 billion people in this world. I promise you, you have people out there and you're going to find them. Something that particularly young people get into, and probably adults as well, get into a real big thing of is I can't find my people at school or at the jobs that I'm working, therefore they don't exist. I didn't have any friends at school. I went to school up until midway through 8 until I was 13. I never had any friends at school. However, when I started getting homeschooled and I started getting into extracurricular activities and I started horse riding and I went to photography clubs and I went to acting classes and singing groups and dancing lessons and stuff, I found people that I was able to connect with because we had the same interests. We had something in common. We had something to connect us. We had something that we could talk about. At school, it's like the only thing that you all have in common is that you're the same age and probably live in the same district. Whereas find your special interest, find your eye sparkle, find what it is that makes you spark. And if you can't find that group in person, I promise you there'll be online groups for it. There'll be Facebook groups, there'll be Discord servers. There will 100% be groups online that you can connect with if in-person communication isn't something that you can do. Find your people. I promise you your people are out there, and that could be via a special interest group. It could be via a youth group. There are so many like even disability support groups and autism support groups. Some of the first friends that I made was going to autism groups, and we're all autistic, so we can all ramble to each other and skim and be our authentically autistic selves. And I know I'm not going to get ridiculed for it because they're doing the same thing. Your people are out there, and I promise you they are. You just have to find the right places and find your places, and you'll find them.
I love that message. Your people are out there. That is such a great message, Chloe. And you shared a very sad story too, how you were diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder at the age of 7. And you mentioned that 80% of intellectually disabled women have been sexually abused. And disabled people are 7 times more likely to be a victim of sexual abuse.
You know, I've been through this, and if I could rip that page out of my story, I would in a heartbeat, but I can't do that. So I'm not going to let this take over my life forever. If I have the opportunity to make sure that other people are aware of this and that it might not happen to other young people in future and to other disabled people in future, then like what happened to me has a purpose.
You had a very supportive mum and dad, and it dawned on me that I thought about maybe people who didn't have a supportive mum and dad who might feel alone, but I hope by reading your book, they won't feel alone. How does it feel to see your book out?
It's very weird. It's very strange. I was doing Heartbreak High press the day that it came out from like early in the morning to late at night, so I didn't get to go out to the bookshops and see it, but I was flying home back to Melbourne that day, and I just walked into like this like tiny little news agency, and I saw my book there, and I literally just like broke down into tears, like in the middle of the airport. My book was there, and it was like the most surreal experience to see my book like just vibing out in an airport. And then every time I go out now, I see it at Civics, and I see it at Big W, and I see it at Target. It's very, very, very strange. And I've gotten so many messages from people, you know, saying like, oh, I just got my book, and showing photos of them with it. And people saying like, oh, I got your book for my birthday, or like I put it on my Christmas list and stuff like that. It's so exciting. It's so cool. It feels very pretend.
I love it. It's so exciting. It's so cool. I love the cover. At the start of the book, you talk about fairy tales, but the cover is so beautiful. I mean, it's so positive. It's like orange. You've got little butterflies. For everyone, go to the Spirit Girl YouTube channel. You can see me holding up Chloe's book. And you love to be an advocate for disabilities. You do a lot of work in that field. And you got some really raving reviews. So Jordan Steele John, who is an Australian senator and disability rights advocate, says it's fierce, unapologetic, and joyous. This book is a marvel. And I really loved the quote you started with, which is from Mr. Gorian's, "Your life is an occasion, rise to it." If someone was tuning in now and they go, Chloe, I'm so glad I've discovered you because I'm autistic, I've got ADHD. What would be your words of wisdom to our listeners tuning in if they feel like they're not enough? What would you say to them right now?
Who you are is exactly who you're supposed to be. You are the only version of you, and that is so incredibly magical. And it might not feel like it right now, but I promise you're going to find your place in the world, and it's going to be absolutely incredible.
I love that. That is incredible, Chloe. That's so beautiful. What are a couple of your self-care rituals that you do to take care of yourself?
I have a routine that I like to try to stick to, which helps me to kind of just regulate myself. I like to do yoga every morning when I wake up and every night before I go to sleep. I have a therapist that I see once a week, which I think is incredibly important. I think everyone in the whole world should have a therapist. I don't think you need to be sick to have a therapist. I spend lots of time outdoors and with my horses and with my animals, and I make sure that I surround myself with a positive network that makes me feel like my best self. I love being autistic, and I think autistic people are freaking cool as hell. If you have a look at any person at the top of their industry, like you have a look at literally any industry, any field, and you have a look at the top people in that field, I promise you from the bottom of my heart, they're autistic. Autistic people are freaking sick.
I love that. Caring for your mental health, a down day checklist. You're happy to share a couple of tips from that?
Rewatch your favorite comfort movies over and over again. That's my personal favorite. Take a self-care day, have a bubble bath, make yourself a cup of tea, go get a facial, get your nails done, whatever it is that makes you feel calm and happy and relaxed. Do that. And reduce expectations of yourself. You're not a superhuman. You don't have to be doing the most every single day. Allow yourself to simply exist as a human being and know that your worth doesn't change just because you're not contributing.
That is such incredible tips. If someone was managing a brand, it could be clothes, what would you like to see in terms of messaging, and how could we make people feel less excluded and more included.
I mean, the media kind of perpetuates what we believe is considered the beauty standard. It starts with magazines, and nowadays a lot of it is influencers and TV shows and movies and the sort of people that we see and the sort of bodies that we see and the sort of neurotypes that we see in that. It's not that hard to include people. It's not that hard to take that narrative away, and instead the clothing companies using models of different diversities and ethnicities and body types and disabilities showcase human beings that are human beings. And the same in movies, show stories and books have lived experience. It's not hard to have everyone included. It's as simple as being able to listen and being able to showcase it.
What is your hope for your newfound book readers?
I hope that young people can read this book and see themselves represented correctly. And I hope that parents and teachers and psychologists and doctors and anyone who knows someone that's neurodivergent can read this book and go, oh, okay, I get it now.
I love that. Well, I love your book. You've done an incredible job doing incredible things here, really being the voice and opening up for others. Thank you so much, Chloe. How can we stay in touch with you after this podcast show?
You can go and follow me on my social medias, which is Chloe S. Hayden on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, the works. If there's social media, I'm probably on it. So you can go and follow me on there.
Thank you, Chloe. It's been an absolute pleasure. Super grateful.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening in to Feel Good From Within with yvetteleblowitz, Spirit Girl podcast. I hope you found this conversation of interest and benefit to you. In support, I would love for you to subscribe to Feel Good From Within with yvetteleblowitz, Spirit Girl on any podcast app you listen to the show through, or on YouTube too, and to also leave a 5-star rating and review of what you think. 2, share this show with your family, friends, and community, and be sure to subscribe to my mailing list at spaitgirl.com, yvetteleblowitz.com, feelgoodfromwithin.com, and to follow Spirit Girl or Yvette Leblowitz on any social media app. And together, let's feel good from within.